Grinders. Welcome to RotoGrinders Today. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderHD, BlenderHD. If you're going to follow me on Twitter. And it's Friday, March 8th. We'll be taking a look at the MMA slate for tomorrow. UFC 299. 14 fights, and I believe they're all still on. The weigh-ins have already happened. So we should be good with all the fights. And joining me, like he does every Friday for MMA, it's the king of the takedowns, the guy that likes to hit the nuts here on RotoGrinders. It's John Breslin, aka Squirrel Patrol. Sorry, we're a little bit late. My internet is going in and out.
I was going to say we're just waiting for CJ Vergara to weigh in again. That was the delay, but the fight's officially on, so we were able to go live once he agreed to take a 30% cut to his purse. So yeah, all fights are on. So good card.
And something new that we're doing here on Friday, right? First off, obviously, hit those thummy thumbs. You know how much I like those. Hit the thummy thumb button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell to know when we go live. We got NBA later today on the channel, Crunch Time, Grinders Live. But on Fridays now, because we love alliteration, I love alliteration. We're running Freebie Fridays. Freebie Fridays, where one piece of content across the board here on RotoGrinders will be free to access to all. A piece of premium. You don't even have to be a premium member, right? If you do, you want to click on that link in the description, get $10 off your first month. So we're going to spin the wheel and see which piece of content. Here are the choices. We got the core plays, the if-then projections, scroll it, lineup HQ, Sim Labs, fantasy, the Pick'em tool, right? And this is for all sports. So, like, if you're playing NHL tonight, I mean, you could use lineup HQ for NHL or NBA, or make your MMA lineups, right, for tomorrow. Sim Labs for NBA tonight, right? So it's not just it's not just for MMA, or it's not just for NBA. I guess the if-then projections just for NBA. So let's spin this wheel and see what the Freebie Friday is. We get to know. Oh. You're in the club. It looks like up. I'm lagging. Up. We're here. Looks like the fantasy pick'em tool. There you go. So we'll send that over to whoever needs to change that access protocol on the site. And now you get the fantasy pick'em tool. That's for Prize Picks, Underdog, DraftKings Pick 6. You get that. I use that pick'em tool. Okay, so you can go there, and that gets updated throughout the day. So if you want to compare our projections here at RotoGrinders to the numbers that are at Prize Picks, Underdog, DraftKings Pick 6 for all sports, NHL, NBA, whatever, you could use that today for nothing. And if you like it, get the props and pick'em package. If you don't even need a premium membership, you just get the props and pick'em package, and you can use that all the time. So there you go. So, John, we got a big contest tomorrow, right? 200K plus the first UFC 299 and 14 fights. So, me and you as the large field GPP players, we love being able to build lineups that may not be as duplicated. But the thing that stands out on this card in general is that I think finishes may be at a premium.
Okay. Interesting. So, well, there is one guy that's got a really high chances of getting a finish, which is like the 6'7" Taekwondo guy making his UFC debut, Despaigne. So he's got like a over 60% chance I'm seeing of getting a first round win. He's like a 6'7", former, I think, bronze medal Olympic winner in Taekwondo. And he's probably not like a future UFC champion or anything. But I think he's going to beat the snot out of Josh Parisian. So looks like Parisian was having trouble making the heavyweight weight lift. Like it came in at 266 and he's like sweating. So I think there'll be a finish there, but I agree. It's weird to have that fight then because we've got 2 5-round fights that could both be pretty high scoring. So I do actually think it's going to be a little bit of a difficult card to get like a really unique lineup because I think a lot of people are going to be playing those 5-round fights. but I also think that's the right thing to do because I think they're going to be high scoring. But yeah, other than that, there's not like we've seen like cards, especially the fight night cards, where maybe one of the fighters isn't like as up with like professional training as the other fighter, and you've seen these like kind of outsized inside the distance lines, outsized like round one finish lines. This card it's more competitive fights, which is good. But yeah, probably not as many finishes.
Right, because we take a look here, especially in the mid range. I mean, more than half the fights are favored to go the distance. So I think, I mean, we'll start breaking this down from looking at the 5 round fights first, then taking a look at the kind of the expensive options. Then we'll take a look at what value. But overall, uh, to me, I view this as I'll be making 75 to 100 lineups. I view this as I feel like I'm targeting fights, and there may be fights where I barely have. I almost feel like I could safely X them out and just like if they beat me, they beat me type of thing. It's just like the differences between like on a 14 fight card, it's not as difficult to get uniquer, right? It doesn't have to be unique, but under 5 dupes, under 10 dupes. And I'm not sure if I want to start pairing some of these high, like low probability ITD fighters like together. Like it feels like there are certain fights on the slate where can I take a shot on one of them, but then the rest of the lineup could be kind of like I could be a little bit chalkier because I think those fights are going to go significantly less owned. But the 5 round fights, we got O'Malley versus Vera. We got Saint Denis versus Poirier. Saint Denis is minus 160 inside the distance as a minus 210 favorite. O'Malley is a 255, minus 255 favorite, but a plus 225 inside the distance, which kind of makes sense with his style against Marlon Vera. You got the name value of Poirier, but I mean, Benoit Saint Denis, essentially, just high pace. I mean, think of like a maybe a miniature version of like Marab, not as skilled. And then you have Vera, who probably doesn't win a decision, but I mean is live to end the fight at any time. How are you treating these 5 round fights? Are we just going along with ownership? I mean, to me, I think Saint Denis has more of a chance of putting up a score that you'll need to have than O'Malley.
Yeah, I think that's true. I agree with that. I was looking at Saint Denis like game log basically is fight history, and I was thinking like if he doesn't get the first round finish, like if he doesn't get the early finish, maybe he doesn't score that well. And then I was looking at his pace. I'm like, oh no, like he's got like these monster scores because he is getting like first and second round finishes. But even if he doesn't, the pace that he's putting up is going to be really high scoring, and it's terrifying to think what his score could be if it goes 5 rounds. And like Poirier isn't a bad fighter. Like that fight might not end early. So Benoit Saint Denis could end up putting up a really high score. I kind of like Saint Denis to win. I kind of like him to put up a really high score. I agree. Like Sean O'Malley, he scored some really high paced, high points, high DraftKings point totals in some of his fights in the past. I'm not sure if that's as like likely to be replicated, I guess, in this fight. But I think both of them could score very well. But I agree. I'd side with Benoit Saint Denis if I have to pick one of them.
Right. From a pricing perspective, Benoit Saint Denis is 8,900, O'Malley's 9,200. So obviously, O'Malley needs to do more at his price in order to make that optimal lineup. And obviously, later in the day, you'll see for premium members, we'll have the simulation output out. And it's something that me and John look at, pretty much religiously on how we build our lineups, on how often the fighters end up making the optimal. I'm going to guess that O'Malley's not. I don't think out of the 5 round fighters, I think as far as making the optimal, I think it's going to be Saint Denis 1, Poirier 2, Vera 3, O'Malley 4. And I'm not saying, but I don't think O'Malley's going to come in like 10% chance.
No.
But it'll be significantly lower because you got guys like Almabayev, Gamrot, Despaigne, and then you got obviously Kyler Phillips and Marina Moroz, who I'm maybe not as worried about. But like, it's so much easier to fit in lineups with an $8,900 fighter where you're still playing another one of these 9K fighters. But when you play Sean O'Malley in your lineup, that $300 difference squeezes. You know, the more and more favorites that win and less underdogs win, O'Malley's chances of making the optical go lower and lower.
Yeah, I agree. One of the issues though is I like O'Malley to win this fight. I don't know if it's like games, but like Marlon Vera looked terrible on the scales, and I don't know that always means something. But like he needed like the box and stuff to make weights, and he was like, and he looked like gaunt. He was confused coming off the scale, which direction to go in. I never like that. I like it when they get off the scale and they know what direction to walk off stage. So. I think I would not be surprised if the line actually widens a little bit in O'Malley's favor. So I think O'Malley's going to win the fight. So I don't know. It's going to be tough. I think the 5-round fighters do have an edge, but you start to run out of roster spots, right? Like, and then if you want to get like Despaigne has got like the 2/3 chance of a first round finish, and he's not the most expensive fighter on the card. But then you start to run out of salary quickly. You start to run out of roster spots quickly, and then the other fighters like priced at really at like 8,500 and above. You start to like maybe see very low ownership if everyone's going with like Despaigne and then the 2 5-round favorites.
Well, let's talk about the 9K fighters, and Robelis Despaigne. You mentioned before he's 4-0. He's only had 4 professional fights.
Yes.
The bronze medalist, Taekwondo, which is typically not the best base for MMA.
Yeah.
His 3 out of his 4 fights lasted less than 12 seconds. So, like, the sample size.
Not a lot of tape to watch, yeah.
The thing is, John, nothing against the guy. Okay? This is purely not personal. Josh Parisian may be the dumbest fighter that I've ever seen in the UFC. Like, is Parisian bad? Yes, but he's still a UFC fighter. He's had plenty of UFC fights. The thing is that, like, it seems so obvious here that as long as he could avoid the first couple of strikes, he should just take this guy down because he's coming from Taekwondo. It's heavyweight. He's not getting up. The thing is that Parisian has been in these types of spots against one-dimensional strikers and not done that. And just has no problem just walking right into punches. Has no gas tank. But it's hard for me. I know the betting line. The betting line right now, minus 295 inside the distance. Minus 330. Like, essentially, he's minus 330 favorite. 77% win probability. 75% of that is inside the distance, and 71% of that is inside the first round. And that's small of a sample size. Is this guy's going to be 50% owned on a 14-fight card? He could go out and win. I mean, his win condition is not grappling based. So, like, outside of the first minute, it's quite possible that maybe he scores 105 and, he knocks out Josh Parisian, a minute and 10 seconds in. And I think I could be okay. But like I said before, finishes could be at a premium in this card. So maybe even 105 at 9,300 is good enough to win. So, like, all these variables bouncing around. And then it feels like to me, John, my style of play is give me 8 to 10% own Josh Parisian. And, like, dude, you're going to not only knock off, like, I think if Parisian wins this fight, he's probably going to be optimal. Right?
Yeah.
I don't see this fight being a 15-minute fight and Parisian win unless he lays on top of him for 3 rounds. And if he does that, he probably scores well enough for 6,900 in a decision. I don't see it lasting that long. it just how do you trust a guy with such a small sample size and such a like it's a window of scoring like 125 with his style, and then a style that traditionally it's like you're relying on like 4 strike. Like it's not volume. It's like, does he hit a head kick or a punch out of the 6 punches that he throws? And does that knock the other guy out?
I think the answer to that question is probably yes, because like there is a body composition difference between these two guys. Like I was watching the weigh-ins. Despaigne's 6'7" and in excellent shape. Parisian is not in good is not in good shape. I don't think either one of these guys expects or is planning or is thinking of the possibility of this fight going outside the first round. So I do think it'll probably end in the first round. I think the question is like Despaigne just doesn't have like the UFC experience and like or skill set even, right? Like he's got a totally different skill set than like the kind of fights he's going to be in. I don't think it will matter with my estimate, my layman's estimate of what the difference in their athleticism probably is. So like Despaigne is a former like Olympic medalist, right? I think it was 2012, but Parisian is being sent in here to lose to give Despaigne a win, so that then they can roll out this kind of like tall, 6'7" former Olympic medalist into some other fights that and it's on the pay-per-view for a reason, like on the prelims of a pay-per-view for a reason. I think Despaigne's going to get the win here. I think it's probably going to be early. I think, and even if it's not early, I think it'll be within the first round. And so he's going to be putting up points, and it's a difficult thing because if he does lose, right, like if Parisian wins, you're going to feel like such an idiot. Like this guy doesn't even like fight UFC. Why was I picking Despaigne at like 50% ownership? I just think there's a very good chance that what we expect to happen happens, and they're like Despaine's going to put up a pretty high score. I agree that if you aren't putting Despaigne in a lineup, like you should strongly consider Josh Parisian at his price. Because if Parisian's getting a win at that price, and again, it would probably be a first round win, or at least an early win, or maybe a worst case like a second round win where he's getting a ton of control time just laying on top of him. But I think Despaine's going to win here. But then if you're taking the 2 5-round fights, either side, and then Despaigne, now you got 3 more roster spots and not a lot of salary.
And also not a lot of options. You'll be duping with 80, 100 people at a time. Above Despaigne, we got Almabayev and we got Gamrot. Almabayev, these are the 2 biggest favorites on the slate. -575 Almabayev over Vergara. Gamrot is -455 over Dos Anjos, who has name value, but if we saw in his last fight, I think he's kind of fallen off a cliff a bit. Obviously, Gamrot has the grappling upside for DraftKings scoring, but only +240 inside the distance. Most of the time, he's winning decisions. He's winning them decisively on the ground, which does well for DraftKings scoring, but unless he completely wrecks Dos Anjos for 3 rounds like that, Gamrot typically doesn't score well. Typically he does perfectly fine. Like when he's in the mid-price and he scores 95 points, you're pretty happy. You're like, okay, that's pretty good. At a $9,400 price tag, I'm not sure. And then you got Almabayev at -135. Probably similar game plan to CJ Vergara. But that fight is much more likely to end via a submission or like a grounded pound finish. Because, essentially, if this fight stays on its feet, it's a dud, and it's more on the side of Vergara. But on the ground, you have to assume that Almabayev, is very live for the submission. It just, when does that submission come? And does it come with enough control time or enough ground strikes that he pays off a $9,500 price tag? If you were not playing Despaigne or O'Malley, because I don't think you could play like one of these guys and a higher price. You have to screw it. You would have to be playing like a Vera Munoz type. You can. which one of these guys would you prefer? Do you prefer the guy that is more likely to finish early, or would you rather side with the guy that more likely racks up points? And if he does get a finish, I mean, if Gamrot gets a finish the way that he wrestles, I mean, he's going to be the one that's going to have the highest score on the slate. It typically doesn't happen that often. And he's facing Rafael Dos Anjos, who, albeit being older, I mean, he's fought the best fighters in the division for years.
Yeah. So it's interesting, because I was listening to Liam's stuff. He's the real UFC X's and O's guy, and he kind of likes Dos Anjos in this spot. I would, if I'm choosing between Almabayev and Gamrot, I think I'd go with Almabayev. I think he's got the better chance for an early finish, and I think like CJ Vergara, just missed weight again. I just think Almabayev's going to win this fight. I have much more confidence in that for a similar line than for Gamrot winning. Gamrot, and especially in terms of like DFS, Gamrot's 2 fights last year, I think, had about 85 points in both of them. He attempted like 18 takedowns. That's a lot of takedowns. Like, and if he was like getting those takedowns and like chain wrestling, the guy's getting back up and then he's taking him back down, that's one thing, because that's racking up points. This just seems like he has a lot of unsuccessful takedowns. So like it seems like he could be high scoring. But it's really just he's not getting the takedowns consistently and then letting the guy back up and then taking him back down again to like drain his cardio. He's just faced guys that are not going down as easily as I guess his talent, is able to take them down.
The fights that I'm most interested in are all the close fights in the mid range, because I think not all of them, but most of them. Michel Pereira versus Michael Olajaychuk, Jack Della Maddalena versus Gilbert Burns, Jan Cutelaba versus Felipe Lins, and Curtis Blades versus Jelton Almeida. I think the 2 mid-range fights that I'm more likely to avoid are Holland Page. Most likely that's a fight. I mean, Holland's plus 200 inside the distance as a favorite. Most likely that fight plays out at range. Very similar style fighters. They both tend to fight with their hands down, but they typically are far away from each other, far away enough that it'll be a lot of playing with their food. So on a 14-fight card, I think there are better options, better fights to target. I also think Peter Yan versus Song Yadong. I mean, I think that fight is one of the ones that are most likely to go the distance, and it's a pick'em. So it's like, get the right fighter is hard because it's close, and then most likely it doesn't end inside the distance. So the winner of this fight scores 70 points, most likely. Probably avoid it, especially with the name value. People look, Peter Yan, I'm going to play Peter Yan. I don't know about that, but all these other fights, like let's take a look at the very mid-range, the Blades Almeida fight. I mean, it's hard to see this one going to decision. The question comes in, I think overall, I mean, Almeida's a physical beast, but Curtis Blades, I mean, Almeida's been facing guys that, don't have the wrestling pedigree that Blades has. So I'm not sure that Almeida's going to be able to just like smoke him on the ground. But the issue with Blades has been in his past couple of fights is that he hasn't really been wrestling much. He's been striking more. And I mean, I know Sergey Pavlovich has a power punch, but I mean, Blades has been knocked out by other guys before. That he gets into these striking battles with limited defense and no chin. Is Almeida? I mean, Almeida's not a technical striker, so it's like Blades just has to avoid some flailing shot. I feel like the winner of this fight at these prices scores well. I just don't know which side it's going to be, because I think there's a big step up in competition for Jelton Almeida.
It is, but so this is the exact range I want to target. Basically you started like naming it off, probably from like the 8,600, like Jack Della Maddalena, maybe Pereira down, and like each of their opponents, but actually kind of like the cheaper fighter in almost every fight. I think if some of these like cheap guys win, like you might need every bit of salary on this card. So like if some of these guys like even like Michael Page at 7,700, I agree. I like Page at 7,700 because like if he wins a little bit of a lower paced fight, at 7,700, that's more feasible for him to land on the winning lineup than like Kevin Holland winning a low paced fight at 8,500. But yeah, and then in terms of the Blades Almeida fight, I kind of like Almeida a lot. I think he's got like 6 UFC fights and they're all over 100 DK points. It is a step up in competition. Blades just doesn't seem to do well in his recent fights. I mean, I guess he lost to Sergey Pavlovich and he beat Tom Aspinall and it looks like a great score. But Aspinall like ripped his knee apart, like a non-contact injury, I think, with 15 seconds into the fight. So that was a big score for Blades. But if you remove that from his record, it's more like he just has one loss to Sergey Pavlovich in the last 2 years. So like and that's his only like UFC outcome. So Almeida is as a fighter that has been putting up tremendous scores, and he even won. Like his last fight was a 5-round decision. So he can do that against Derek Lewis. Yeah, so I like Almeida on this fight. I'm surprised he's the cheaper fighter. I'm surprised the line isn't wider. If I had to like bet on Almeida, I will be putting Almeida into my lineup so at 8,000 because I think he can put up a high score in a number of different ways, and that's a great price. And I'll certainly be playing some Curtis Blades as well. I don't think it's like a thing where Almeida is going to like trounce him and is going to win 80% of the time or anything like that. I just if you're giving me even money, I'm going to take Almeida in that fight, and if you're giving me an extra $200 DFS, I'm going to take Almeida.
The thing about these mid-range fights, just to make it clear for people, like we're targeting these fights for ceiling. None of these, I mean, the floors of these guys are really low. So, like you mentioned, like the Pereira Olajaychuk. I prefer the Olajaychuk at 7,500 because, I mean, he's plus 250 inside the distance, and he could knock Pereira out. If he doesn't do that, he's dead. I mean, like it simply comes down to that. Like Olajaychuk ain't gonna score well in a 3-round decision, right? If it gets, he probably doesn't win a 3-round decision, but if it gets to that, you got 1 round. Eventually, Olajaychuk, you got 1 round, 7,500. Can he score 100 points? Michel Pereira has a little bit more paths because of he submission grappling, stuff like that, but he's also 8,700, so he has to do a lot more of that. And the same could be said when Michael Page versus Kevin Holland. It's like a 90-point win by Page is doable at 7,700, but not so much doable at 8,500. The Blades Almeida is right in the middle, so I don't think it really matters. But you got Della Maddalena versus Gilbert Burns. I think we're low on Burns' ownership. I think this fight is going to be. I think Maddalena's ownership is going to be higher. Also, I find this could easily be a binary outcome fight. Della Maddalena is like his defensive wrestling has really not been really tested, right? Like, and the thing is that Gilbert Burns is someone that when it hits that second round, you're wondering, does this guy have a gas tank? And like is Gilbert Burns going to be able to attempt 20 takedowns against Della Maddalena? I'm not sure if he's able to. But the thing is that can he get 1 takedown? And if he could get 1 takedown, successful takedown against Della Maddalena, he may not need 19 more because he may just submit him on the mat right there. And if he can't get the takedowns, Gilbert Burns, not very good defensively on his feet, could get completely waxed by JDM, and JDM gets the first round TKO win. Not safe for floors, but I mean, obviously, from a scoring perspective, I'll take the cheaper fighter, especially one with the grappling upside, because even if Della Maddalena wins in the second round after like almost losing in the first round on the ground, like his score is not going to be good because he didn't score much in the first round anyway. So like Like Della Maddalena, in order to score 100 points, probably only has 5 minutes also.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons, like on my like Excel spreadsheets and dashboard and stuff, I always take the first round win odds. Like you brought up like Ola just that like yeah, he's probably first round or bust. So like I want to see like if I'm determining like an ownership percentage and I want to play this guy at, what's his chances of winning in the first round? I basically want to own him maybe at that rate, and depending on the price, like higher or lower. And yeah, the Gilbert Burns versus Jack Della Maddalena fight. I agree. Like I like Della Maddalena to win the fight, which is reflected in the odds. I like Gilbert Burns as a DFS play more at 7,700. Della Maddalena had 3 fights last year, which is a lot, and I think he won all 3 of them. But like one of them was like Bessel Hafez, who like came in as a late replacement, and I think Jack Della Maddalena was like a minus 500 or minus 600 or something, and kind of barely won a decision. Like Hafez looked really good against Della Maddalena. And then who else did he fight later in the year? Kevin Holland. And again, like had like a 70 something point DK win, which is like okay, but it's not at 8,500. But Della Maddalena does have higher scoring wins in his game log, before last year. So I'm certainly not going to have like none of him, but I'm probably going to have more Gilbert Burns than Della Maddalena, even though I think Maddalena is probably going to win the fight.
The last one in the mid range, the ITD and round 1 lines are not out for this, or not at least not on the major sports books that I look at. It's a minus 120 plus 100 fight. Jan Kudalaba, Felipe Lins. I don't see this fight making it to the scorecards. But I also don't trust either fighter. I don't even trust, dude, it's a Felipe Lins fight. I don't even trust that this fight even happens after lock, right? Lins has pulled out of fights. I mean, obviously he's pulled out earlier than, not the day of. And Jan Kudalaba is a DFS gold mine, the way that he fights for scoring. The problem is that he does a lot. He's like, wow, he got 36 points in the first round. And then a minute into the second round gets knocked out. like he's high pace, not very defensive. He could wrestle. He strikes powerful. He's not a good fighter. Felipe Lins ain't a good fighter either, but Felipe Lins doesn't have much much volume. Like I think Felipe Lins has 5 minutes to get 100 points in this fight. I think Kudalaba has more paths to 100 plus points, but ain't trust. I mean, dude, he always ends up being popular and loses. So like, how owned is he going to be? I think his ownership on the slate may actually be lower than he would be on a normal. Like if this was a 12 fight night card, Kudalaba at 8,400 would probably be like 40+% owned. But because we have all these other mid-range fights here and 2 5-rounders, I think that comes down considerably. And if you've been playing UFC DFS, you probably have like PTSD at some point from playing Jan Kudalaba. And you're like, okay, I played him the last 3 slates. He lost all 3 times. I'm done with this guy. So are you still more inclined to play the cheaper fighter in Lins?
I think so. I noticed the same thing that you noticed, which is that the inside, like the distance lines, like the first round finish lines are not out yet for this fight. It's a rescheduled fight, I think, from October. And looking at the article, it does say Lins is withdrawn from 7 UFC fights, and including this last fight, I think was canceled after lock. Like Lins was sick, pulled a Raul Rosas before Rosas even did it. So definitely going to make you nervous, but I agree that it could be a really sneaky fight. Like it's almost like playing a late guy or a questionable player in NBA when there's no late swap, right? Like I think this fight could get canceled still, even though both guys made weight. But if they don't, it could be a fight you need to have. And I think it's going to be a little bit of a sneaky fight because like not all of that stuff that people want to look at for the fight is out yet. We don't have that information But like under 1.5 rounds is -150. So that's the kind of thing that I want to see in a fight. Even if I don't have like the inside the distance lines on the individual fighters, like people do not expect this fight to go 1.5 rounds. So and I think even if it does, like the guys are like heavy, fast paced enough that it could score well. So I'm probably going to pick a side here on a lot of my lineups. I still prefer the Felipe Lins side, even though he's probably the fighter more likely to pull out of the fight. But yeah, he's 7,800, so has to do less. So yeah, I'm going to go with Felipe Lins in a good portion of my lineup. Probably going to try to end up over the field on him. From the guys that know fighting, they've said that, like if he shows up in shape, he's a fighter that he has a very good chance of winning the fight. Like he's one of the guys you want to see on the scales, and I think he looks pretty good on the scale today. So I'm probably going to end up with some Felipe Lins in my lineups and maybe a Squirrel Patrol's takedown fighter for the article.
So in the takedown article, a lot of times you're talking about, lower owned underdogs. So outside, I mean, what would you, if we consider the 5-round fights, okay, rank the five underdogs in order while also considering their ownership. So, yeah, obviously it's like, oh yeah, you'd like Marlon Vera, but I mean, if he's going to be 33% owned, that would knock him down. So like what? Maybe not top 5, but top 3. I just want to include the 5-round fights, and that because I think the 5-round underdogs are actually going to be lower owned on this slate because it's a 14-fight card than they would be on an 11-fight fight night card. So getting a 5-round fighter that wins a decision at these prices, is worth it even probably at 25 or 30% owned. So to me, that's still under-owned enough. So who would you be prioritizing for large field GPPs as far as low ownership considered underdogs?
So actually, I think both of the 5-round underdogs should be owned at least at should be owned at about their chances of winning the fight. And actually, I think we actually have Vera projected at ownership above his chances of winning the fight. So I think I'm seeing we've got about 34% projected ownership, and he's got about a 30% chance of winning the fight. I actually don't think it's impossible he ends up on the winning lineup in a loss even if this fight is fast is paced in that direction. I probably like Poirier a little bit better than Vera considering the ownership, because I think either one of them lands on the winning lineup in a win. So I'd rather have Poirier than Vera. She's got a better chance of winning the fight. Outside of the main event fighters, probably like Pedro Munoz. He's only 7,100. I think he can win this fight. I don't think that he's necessarily going to be that high scoring, but I guess 7,100. He's got a 34% chance of winning the fight. That's not bad. I think outside of the main event fighters or the 5-round fighters, 5-round underdogs, I think I like Munoz the best. Then it starts to get a little bit thin after that. I don't really like any of the super cheap fighters other than Munoz and the main event underdogs, like CJ Vergara. I don't think he's going to win the fight. I guess if he does win the fight, he's got a really good chance of landing on the winning lineup, but it's an under 20% chance. So I'll probably roster him at less than 20%. Parisian, I think you have to have strongly consider him in non-Despaigne lineups. But again, I just think he has almost no chance to win this fight. And then Joanne Calderwood is interesting. She is actually pretty high paced, and I actually think she's a really good cash game play. For 7,200, that fight has a pretty good chance of going the distance, and Calderwood land significant strikes at a pretty good pace. So she's actually got a pretty good floor, and I would consider her definitely for cash games if you need to go in that direction. But then again, she might not be great for cash games because you have 2 5-round underdogs to pick from. So yeah, I know that's kind of my breakdown of the absolute cheapest fighters.
Right. For me, at the current ownership projections that we have, I would say number 1 for me would be probably Poirier, just by default. 2 would be Burns. 3 would be Parisian, just for leverage.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just it has to. I mean, if he wins, he's going to, not only is 50% of lineups going to be busted, but you're not going to be having to compete against not many people also, because 40% of the lineups also don't have him either. And then it gets dicey. Then I guess I mean, to me, Ola Jaychuk is a nice. I mean, if he could come in at under 20% owned, I would like that. But you just have to realize when you watch that fight, it's like you're rooting for the first 5 minutes. And if he doesn't get there in the first, like he ain't going to score well in a decision, so you don't have to worry about that. And everyone else is like you can't. We haven't mentioned like Almeida or Blades, like whoever is the underdog in that. I mean, 8,000. When you look at lineup construction on a card where all the favorites win, like the fighters that matter are the highest scoring fighter that's 7,700 or lower, right? So until a fighter 7,700 or lower wins, like the slate really hasn't even started. Like who's going to be in the optimal lineup hasn't really even like kind of started yet. So that's why I don't consider like Lins or Song Yadong or Almeida to really like they're in the same range of the fighters that you're playing Kudalaba, Jan, Blade. Like you need to play someone low 7,700 or lower in order to make a valid lineup in general, using 50K in salary. So I think I mean, you get it, because I mean, if you go by pricing, you'd say like Almeida would be number 1 on your list because he's the priced underdog and he's actually favored now.
Yeah. I actually, just looking at the ownership, like CJ Vergara, we've got it less than 4%, which I'm not sure I've ever seen before. And he has almost no chance of winning the fight. And I just kind of trashed him, but he's only 6,700. Like, he should be higher owned than that. But I do think that's more of a thing if you're doing a bunch of lineups. Like if you're doing, 50, 100, 150 lineups, like you need to get some CJ Vergara in there at more than 4%. But like if you're only doing like 10 lineups, you maybe don't want to have him in there at all. But like he's going to have a much higher chance of landing on the optimal lineup than 4%. If he's got about an 18% chance of winning the fight at 6,700, and it's not totally impossible. Some 3-round grappling fest with like reversals and stuff like that he ends up putting up a 40-point score in a loss that doesn't look terrible.
So how about on the high end? So we're going to go to the favorites now. So give me 2 lower owned favorites, right? And now we're throwing out ownership, right? So it's not like, I'll play Saint Denis even at 50% ownership, or Despaigne at 50% ownership. It's like, no, we want 2 fighters that are less than 25% owned, that are favorites, that you may be over the field on. You're more willing to take a shot. Because I got 2 of them.
So under 25% owned favorites. I think Peter Yan is like, we've got him at 15%. So if he wins that fight, I mean, he's not like super high scoring, but he's not low scoring. 8,300, I think, is a good price for him if he wins that fight. So I'd be interested in being over the field there. Let's see. Macy Barber is only 11%. Yeah, I think you got to own Macy Barber at more than 11%. I know you like the ugly women's MMA. I think Barber is going out there with bad intentions. I don't like the sharp people I've listened to don't really like her in this fight, but yeah, I mean she's the favorite, right? So at 11%, I think you got to be over the field on that. So I see you're nodding in agreement. So
I'm agreeing with your point, but you got the wrong woman, right?
Oh, Morose.
The 2 that I see that I would want to play are Marina Moroz at 9,000 and Michelle Pereira at 8,700. Michelle Pereira is plus 130 inside the distance currently, and his style is, I mean, he's primarily going to win probably by submission. I want to, if finishes are at a premium, I want to target low-owned knockout artists or low-owned submission grapplers that either could submit someone in the first round or have a dominant grappling decision victory in 3 rounds. And like Pereira, like Olajaychuk, like dude, the dude has no ground game. So like Pereira, if he lands takedowns, he can put up 100 points in a decision. Like he could also submit him in the first round. So there's a lot more paths to a lot of points. And Marina Moroz is the same way. Now, I don't think Joanne Calderwood or Joanne Wood is like a pushover at all. I think you're right. Before it most likely goes the distance, and Joanne Wood is probably a good cash play because even in a loss, Joanne Wood will probably still have 55 points or 50 points or something, give you enough down there. But Marina Moroz's style, I mean, a lot of fights she's too patient, but I mean, she has wrestling ups. I mean, I compare it to like Macy Barber versus Caitlin Chikagian or Sermonara, whatever it is. I think Macy Barber is just less trustworthy. Like, can she wrestle? Yeah. Will she wrestle? Who knows? Right. This is more likely he's going to look a lot closer than probably should. And Macy Barber gets like 82 points in a win. And there you go. If Marina Moroz just says, I feel like wrestling today, because I definitely have the wrestling advantage, I mean, she'll just go and just lay on top. I mean, like just 3 rounds of submission attempts and 6-7 takedowns. Now, is that the likely outcome? No, but I mean, I'm looking for those types of fighters at low ownership than playing, to me, like playing Kevin Holland at 8,500, where what am I really relying on? Like, I feel like the paths to victory in these fights, or even the Jan Song fight, it's like outside of the first round, these guys can't score. I mean, like either it's a first round knockout or not. And if I'm going to play a guy like that, I have to do it at low ownership. And the fact that like Peter Yan is plus 375 inside the distance. That's a 21% implied probability. Marina Moroz is plus 170 inside the distance. Michelle Pereira is plus 130. And like, I look at these ITD numbers and I go, if the ITD number, if I'm seeing anything under plus 200, if I'm seeing plus 100, plus 150, and I see these guys that are under 20% owned, like that's like twice the likelihood of winning inside the distance for almost like for no ownership. Like Macy Barber's 27%. So I can get on board a Macy Barber lineup. It's not like I have nothing against Macy Barber. I just think Marina Moroz has more paths in a decision, the way that she fights and scoring 100 plus points than Macy Barber does.
Yeah. So I can see going with Moroz over Macy Barber because they were about similar price. I mean, there's a $200 difference. And looking, you're right. Like Moroz actually does have like a 100 point DK decision. So like, yeah, if she's got multiple paths to get there, she can like if she wins a decision and can get 100 points at 9,000, where there might not be a lot of finishes. I can see her being like sneaky, and she should be owned like above her projected ownership. Peter Yan though is only like 8,300. So that's like a substantial price difference. So there's like he has to do less than Moroz. I'd probably rather have Peter Yan. Like I'd rather have more Peter Yan than Moroz. If that makes sense. Just and I know what you're saying that like the inside the distance line is actually like better on Moroz. But Peter Yan can actually, at 8,300 he has to do so much less than Moroz at 9,000.
Right. So your attitude one of them is has like. So John, your attitude clarified. Add additional context. Moreau's lineups it's going to be much harder to play someone like Robelis Despaigne or Sean O'Malley or Benoit Saint Denis. So, like to you, you'd rather play the Saint Denis, the O'Malleys, the Despaignes, like the chalkier, higher scoring likelihood fighters up there, and then play a low-owned Peter Yan and a low-owned Pedro Munoz type of lineup. Then go, well, I'll eat the chalk in the mid-range, right? Play Poirier down there and then end up, instead of playing Despaigne or Benoit Saint Denis, I'm playing Marina Moroz as my like low-owned play in that. Like, to me, I get, and I don't think I would build lineups like that. Like, to me, Moroz lineups would still have probably one of Despaigne or Saint Denis because I don't feel like, I think Moroz comes in at like 12, 14%. I mean, like somewhere like that where I could eat the owner. I mean, I could play 2 5-round fighters in that lineup. Like, it feels like I could easily play an O'Malley, Poirier, Despaigne. I mean, maybe I can't get a Despaigne in that lineup, but like something like that, much easier. But I would not be using Moreau's as well, I'm just going to play, I'm going to play all the chalky underdogs and then play Moreau's Moreau's. I'm going to play Moreau's, Barber, Pereira, right, as my favorites, and then eat the chalk on the underdog. I don't think that's the right way to go.
Yeah. I think you're going to need some of the 5-round favorites. If you pick Moreau's, I think you're much more likely to end up having to take like Dara or play Dustin Poirier. So yeah, I don't know. It should be a good card. But I think it's going to be tight. Like, I think this is not the card where you want to be like, leaving a bunch of salary on the table. Because like some of these favorites can put up high scores. So if they win, like, you're probably gonna have them in the lineup.
And a lot of the underdogs are not people that do put up big scores.
Yeah.
John, you'll have your takedown article tomorrow?
Yeah, probably. I'm going to aim for it today. We'll see. Because I got to start on the NBA stuff. So depending how quickly NBA goes, if we see some like a really shocking 130 NBA injury report, I will probably have takedowns out tomorrow. If the NBA injury report is pretty clean, there's a good chance it'll be coming out tonight.
And today we'll have the Ground and Pound podcast with Liam and Mike, the expert survey, the breakdown article tomorrow. John, you'll be on Crunch Time with Mike tomorrow, right?
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of an early crunch time. I think we're doing crunch time in the afternoon, maybe 3:00. And whereas it's a pay-per-view card, going to be starting late, probably going to be a late night. So I've noticed like some of the books have the Sean O'Malley Vera fight for like Sunday listed, because it's probably going to start after midnight and then go for about an hour. So maybe a late night on Saturday night, but that's all right. It's a pay-per-view card, so it should be an interesting one.
And if you want all of our premium content here at RotoGrinders, all of our MMA stuff, get the combo premium package. Click on that link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. You'll get access to everything: Lineup HQ, our projections, our expert surveys, our SimLabs product, our simulation outputs, or everything. You get our everything. But since it is Freebie Friday, remember, in the beginning of the show, we spun that wheel. And if today, I'm assuming by now that whoever is administrating the site has clicked the switch, that you could use our fantasy pick'em tool today, all day for free. So if you're playing on Prize Picks, on Underdog, on any of those types of sites, we do have a pick'em tool that compares our statistical projections, which get updated all the time throughout the day, for all of the squares. They're available on those sites, so you can see what the top edges are on Prize Picks for NHL, for NBA, for college basketball, for whatever we have up there. If you're playing on Underdog, DraftKings Pick 6, anything like that, try it out today. And if you do like it, right, that's part of our premium package. If you go premium RotoGrinders, you get everything, right? Combo premium, here you go, smorgasbord, right? But if you just want to, you're getting out of DFS, maybe you only play MMA DFS and just like, I don't need a whole combo, whatever, but you still want to bet props and pick them on NBA and NHL and MLB, that when it comes back, get our props and pick 'em package. It's much cheaper. You get access to our extra picks. You get access to the pick 'em tool. You get access to our prop model, top 20 prop model. And I mean, these are tools that I use profitably every single day. I mean, I use our projections in NHL, NBA. For the past 3 years, I've been profitable on Prize Picks and Underdog, and so far profitable in all the retail sports books. So come join me, and come join me in the Discord. We got the MMA channel there as well. RotoGrinders.com/Discord. John, can I promote anything else?
I think we're good.
Okay. Hit that thumbs up button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. We'll be on later today. NBA Grinders Live, Crunch Time, and I'll be back on Monday talking about all things you're thinking about in daily fantasy, props, and pick'em on RotoGrinders Today.